more permanent sort of things?
Our intent is to go directly to those sources.
Okay.
So obviously Amy Cox is on our internal staff committee. Obviously she's a great avenue to reach out to all of those.
Yes.
And probably continuum of care would be the primary sort of our contact, maybe help us organize maybe some meetings. But we intend to go directly to those sources.
Great, thank you.
Right here. You, sir, in the jacket.
I would like to ask the question you requested about the neighborhood.
Yes. Very good. Very good. So,
You get extra points.
you know, and I can talk about this probably the entire morning, but I won't. So the comprehensive plan is an umbrella, you can think about, or a big wheel. And that's how I best describe it. And to make the wheel is the city. And in order for the wheel to go straight, you need all these little spokes to be connected and true. And historically, the city, particularly over the last 20 to 25 years, has really been concentrating on outward expansion, meaning suburban development, making sure our rules and regulations are appropriate for suburban development. We're at the point where our codes and regulations that govern development are really centric towards that suburban development and really are not appropriate for interim redevelopment. It's much harder, it's much more difficult for redeveloping within an established neighborhood, within an established urban form. And I'm sorry if I get too kind of academic here with planning lingo. But it's just harder. One, there's sometimes, and often, neighborhood opposition. The land is smaller. If you apply regular development standards, you will end up with a parking lot in the front and a building in the back, which a lot of us feel that's not an appropriate sort of design in urban areas. So there's these issues. But also, if you really take the city into more granular form, each neighborhood is different. And the city doesn't have neighborhood plans to identify how each neighborhood should redevelop. What are the strengths, what are the opportunities? Betty Jewett may be completely different than the near west side. Betty Jewett may want to retain its more residential character, maybe and I'm not saying that that's how it should be, but the near west side may want to have more mixed-use development. Is it appropriate to have a restaurant like Sugar's in a residential neighborhood? I mean, there's pros and cons with that. Is there pros, is the neighborhood ready to see a fourplex in a block that's primarily single-family residential? And if it's not ready, okay. But you have to understand that in order for redevelopment to occur, there needs to be private investment. And Sarah's laughing. And I know why you're laughing.
Yeah, you do.
And you can't look at the neighborhoods from this level. So neighborhood planning really gets down to what planners call either neighborhood plans, small area plans, to identify the unique characters, the SWOT strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of each neighborhood, and what the city can do to help that neighborhood revitalize. And in many cases, it's not really how it's redeveloped, it's what kind of infrastructure improvements do you need? Is it lack of sidewalks? Is it just pothole streets? Is it simply as the city or maybe neighborhood doing their maintenance along street corridors or landscape areas, streetscape areas? So that's what the neighborhood plan is. What I hope comes out of this comprehensive plan process is that we don't have individual neighborhood plans, because that would not be possible under such a large spanning document. But really provide some direction. One, that should the city do them? Maybe identify larger neighborhood sections. Certainly don't want to anger some neighborhoods and call the neighborhood the wrong name or something. But certainly kind of have that discussion of which are our major areas of neighborhoods, maybe where are the priorities, and hopefully provide to our city council and to the mayor supporting policy documentation to ultimately fund additional neighborhood plans for staff to prepare them, and then fund the necessary improvements or investments in those neighborhoods. The one thing about planning, it doesn't hold true as much as about building departments, because they really see the last step of the process and not building going vertical. What planning departments often do, the fruit of our labor isn't really seen for 10, 15, 20 years from today. Things just don't happen quickly. And it's not because it's bureaucratic, it's not because there's no funding, although that is sometimes the case when it comes to infrastructure. But when we do plans, it takes a while for private investors, landowners, to really reinvest. You know, cities don't build buildings, we don't build, we used to. We do administrative buildings, etc., but we don't really build it. It really comes to the private investor, the developers, i.e. Ivy Wild School, for example. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it took private capital to redevelop that building. We can provide the development community the tools, the means, the processes that are acceptable for that area, but we don't go out there and do it.
Yes, ma'am.
I have two follow-up questions along the lines of transparency and inclusion in both Plan COS and neighborhood planning. I'm wondering what sort of ways of actively seeking participation and real planning of community members exist. Things like an online survey feel kind of passive, and I could write like hashtag urban farms on one of your blackboards, but I wonder how much that input is heard. And on the neighborhood level, I wonder what ways you seek input. For example, the North Nevada revitalization, I know about that because I have the time and tend to stalk the city's calendar. But not everybody has the resources and time to do that. And I live in that area of the city, and a lot of my neighbors don't know about it. And I wonder how you actively seek community participation.
Well, that's a very good question. It's a very tough question.
Can you repeat the question?
I guess how the city engages and seeks input from citizens that perhaps either don't have the time to go online or review city's calendars or actually be notified by the city how we take input from citizens. You know, how do we reach out to the masses, I guess. And I don't know if there's an easy answer. I mean, we do actually have a dedicated staff person that helps departments, the planning department, the traffic or transportation department, i.e. the right sizing of Nevada Avenue. We try our very best. And I don't have a good answer. Like for the North Nevada redevelopment, we've mailed out thousands of little postcards. And I don't have one with me, but we use county assessor's data, you know, to identify property ownership. Now, if you're renting an apartment or renting a home, unfortunately, we don't have an easy way to get that record. I guess there's been some discussion, you know, how we can reach out to those families, those individuals that rent property, apartments or single-family homes or whatever it may be. And really, the only effective way, and it's not 100% bulletproof, is really through utility connections. We have to go into, you know, who is the customer name, the mailing address of that customer. Not assuming that when you rent, you get a utility bill. If it's included in your rent, once again, you wouldn't be able to do it. So from a development review process, we do primarily three things. One is we post posters on a development site that says there's a development review under, or a development application under review, whether it be a zone change or whether it be a new building. Gives a brief description and contact information. Then we mail out direct notification to property owners within, now code gives staff discretion, either 500 feet radius of the project site or 1,000 foot radius of the project site. Most planners, most planning staff, if they know it's a somewhat potential controversial project, we do 1,000 foot notification just to encompass more property owners. And then of course all the agendas are published, City Hall, etc. So, but not everybody can, obviously has access to that. So we do as much as we possibly can. We also have some intermediary steps as part of our development review process. You know, we also hold neighborhood hearings or neighborhood meetings, bless you, if we know that there might be some public input on a particular project. So we also do notification for that as well. But it's difficult because we are a very diverse community. There's a lot of folks that, you know, this is their best way to reach them through apps and social media, etc. And then there's those that, partly including myself, that likes to write comments, likes to call. But with Plan COS, we really are trying to be very, very robust and address different methods of addressing. We will hold neighborhood workshops with the consultant. They'll be strategically located throughout the city. There's a mayoral's State of the City coming up, I believe. Thursday. He will announce, you know, how the public can become engaged. We also are going to rely on our staff and our elected officials to get the word out as well.
Can you hold your question? Because I'm going to ask Craig. Come back to you. I'm going to ask Craig if he would want to speak to what the county does in similar instances. I know you're not doing that. It's a plan right now.
Yeah, and I guess I would agree with Peter. Getting citizens to engage. You see it? I'm not as tall as him, but I'll stand.
I think it's more the projection. Okay.
Yeah.
Getting citizens to engage who either aren't aware or don't want to engage is the biggest challenge I think we deal with on anything, whether it's a development application or updating our comprehensive plans. Like I said, we are going to begin a process of hopefully doing some comprehensive planning. We kind of abandoned it during the recession. We should have the staffing to do it. We have plans that are 29 years old, particularly the Black Forest Preservation Plan is 29 years old. Think about what's happened in Black Forest in the last 29 years. It's pretty substantial. If you haven't been up there, go up there. Post-fire construction has been pretty good, but again, I guess getting back to the question, engagement is always a challenge. Even people that want to get engaged sometimes don't know how. I feel like we're in a transition period where we still want to be able to allow people to engage by phone and to literally send in a hard letter, but also we're asked to be very proactive in terms of making things digital. Everything's got to be online, everything's got to be, you know, the county has like 5 apps for various different things. So those are all good things. With regard to how we handle development applications, typically we send out referrals to adjacent properties. You know, you're talking about the county, so in the case of the city, adjacent might be, you know, 30 feet. In the county, adjacent might be 3 miles. That might cover the next 3 miles, particularly like, for instance, when I worked on the wind farm was 20 square miles in size. Not only would we notify everybody that was going to be constructed on, but also the adjacent ones. We always allow for people to be on a mailing list. We'll send it to them even if they're 30 miles away. We have requirements under state statute that we have to publish notice. Our typical publication source is the Fountain Valley News. You can always look for publications there on things that we're working on. If it's a controversial item, we will also publish in the Gazette. I will just tell you that it's not cheap to publish in the Gazette. It's a lot cheaper for us to publish in the Fountain Valley News, and it's our identified publication source. So we do mailed notice, we do publications, and we also put up the poster on the site. If it's a large project like one like the wind farm, we might put up 40 or 50 different posters to try to catch people at major intersections or major arterial roadways, that kind of thing. I hope that answered the question.
Yes. Roger, did you have anything you wanted to say about that subject?
You know, from a notification standpoint, all of that generally happens at the planning level, long before the permit's issued. So there's not a whole lot of notification. I mean, we do notification of, we have to do it for new contract licenses.
So you're really dealing more with the industry side?
Yes.
than the residential side. Thank you. Yes, coming back to you.
I have a more specific follow-up question about input to the plan COS. It seems like some decisions may have already been made. Here, I think it was Kara Gio who reported on the same report when they were posting your link for input, a quote from the mayor when asked about the potential for urban farms in city infill, just saying no farms in Colorado Springs. And I'm very curious about one, if and why that decision has been predetermined. It said specifically that you were looking for millennials input, and as a millennial and an urban farmer, that definitely turns me away from this city. And my second question is there anybody from the Food Policy Advisory Board on that steering committee? Because if there's nobody representing permanent supportive housing or affordable housing, and nobody representing the food movement on this steering committee, that concerns me.
So, first question, I'm not going to speak on what PRDO reported or not. I think that was in context of, certainly, first of all, let me back up. There's been no decisions made. The city allows community garden. You can have a community garden today. I think the context of Mayor's answer to that question was that there isn't any large parcels of land where you can just farm. But you can have a community garden. In fact, we do have a few. You can obviously garden in your backyard, etc. And I think he responded to that question that Councilman Joe Gabler will be obviously a big proponent of access to locally grown and healthy food. So there's going to be a connection there. I mean, we have to be.
Is she on the steering committee?
Yes, she's the vice chair. She's the vice chair. There's probably thousands of topics, but we need to really concentrate. That the comprehensive plan could probably identify. But we need to really concentrate on what do we want to be when we grow up, and that's such a cliche. And I want to.
No, it's not.
And I want to start using a different word.
No, it's that.
But if we want to have a community, let's say downtown in the greater downtown area, Shooks Run, Petty Jewett, if we want to look like this, are we prepared to adopt standards and regulations to make that happen? And I guess that's really the major part of the comprehensive plan, is if we want to look a certain way, there are certain things that should be allowed or disallowed. Development should look a certain way. We should have buses in certain areas and buses not in certain areas, et cetera, et cetera. So Food Policy Board, we'll probably reach out to them. They can provide comments, but it's going to be probably one of hundreds of issues that will be raised. Whether or not it's the top priority, I couldn't tell you at this point. And then your second question was? That was the second. Was that the second question? All right, so I covered both of them.
And I will note, you can farm in the county all you want. Just come on out.
As long as you can find the water, right?
That's right.
And I'm going to start with Nancy back here. We have 3 or 4 more questions.
I'm in a small, recently organized neighborhood, and I have to say that code enforcement was wonderfully well involved when we had a cleanup recently, and I credit them with a huge success with our neighborhood, and as well as our city councilman was involved. So those two entities were well involved, and we were wonderfully successful, and it generated a lot of esprit de corps and a lot of activity to make us look better and better. My question is, we have 5 rental properties that are neglected, and how should we now proceed to try to get those cleaned up and looking better? And just, it's kind of nebulous in that they don't exactly violate codes, they just kind of look bad.
Well, I mean, your definition of bad may be somebody's definition of I'm just too busy taking kids to soccer practice. Yeah.
Well, we have people who've lived there since the 70s and have beautiful, well-maintained homes, and they hate going out their front door because what they have to see looks so bad.
So there's a number of things, and there's different levels of bad, and I'm sure Craig and Roger would agree with that. There's you know, the chipping paint, maybe the non-manicured lawn, a few overgrown bushes or whatever. Maybe, you know, steps that are kind of leaning, but you can still walk on them. And then there's the unsafe and dangerous building aspect in our city we call it dilapidated building, where the building has dilapidated to the point that it is creates health and safety for the occupants or for the people in the city currently has a very not very strict ordinance for unmaintained, unkept buildings. This is something that the mayor had asked us to look at. It is commonly referred to as a property maintenance code, where we can start addressing some of these buildings, not just residential, but commercial as well. If they're not, they don't cross that threshold of being unsafe or dilapidated. Because then we do have mechanisms in place. The city does, I think the county do, and certainly Roger under the residential building code, the model codes has ability to declare a building as dangerous as unsafe, using the right terminology. But it's the property maintenance, and we try very hard, but it's based right now, unless you have tall weeds, unless you have junk cars or junk trash in your yard, really, that's kind of where we are at this point as a city.
So what I have more in mind is how can I find out who owns these? How can I get them into dialogue?
So a couple of different ways. I mean, you
feel
can go
involved as opposed to, hey,
county
I just
assessor's
own it,
office.
it's across town.
So anybody has access to county assessor's office to identify who the property owner is and the property owner's mailing address.
And if you have trouble with that, give us a call,
Yep.
we can help walk you through
Okay,
it.
thank you.
First time.
That
And whether
probably
you
takes-
could file, you could call us, who can tell you, but we'll do the same research that you do. So you have direct access.
Well, and I totally agree with your statement that basing code enforcement on neighbor complaints is not the way it generates a bad spirit, you know, so.
And I think it might be important, because this sometimes comes up, and it's not a question that you might have asked, but we are often called, the city is often called, probably the county too, is to try to enforce private covenants. Yeah. We do not enforce, vast majority of cities and counties in the country do not enforce private covenants. So if you live in a neighborhood that has covenants that say, thou shalt not do this, or thou shalt keep your grass a certain way, or et cetera, we do not have the means, the resources, the knowledge of all the intricacies of.
I would say we don't have a legal
Right.
obligation or ability to enforce private covenants. That's important. That's an important point, and I don't want to jump in on Peter, but we get called all the time in the county to enforce covenants. They say, well, I just read my covenants, and you need to come out and tell this person they can't have a horse. No. If you don't have an HOA that's enforcing it, the answer is you have to sue your neighbor. That's what it comes down to. That's why sometimes covenants aren't a lot of fun, because if there is no HOA to enforce them, then the mechanism is you have to file a suit against your neighbor. But the county and the city do not have a legal right or obligation to enforce covenants. If it doesn't fall under our covenant enforcement and a violation of either one of our ordinances or our zoning code, we can't touch it.
I will say that Cono has this feeling, that my president is sitting over there, and I have a board member behind who's doing the video.